So hi guys, this week I wanted to talk a little bit about septic and mound systems. I know it's not a very fun topic or a very exciting topic to talk about, but kind of living kind of out in a rural area off the beaten path and not being hooked up to city well and sewage, it is something that could potentially come up at some point. We recently just kind of had a little bit of issue and kind of wanted to share with you guys some troubleshooting kind of techniques for some of this, give you a little overview of the system and kind of a few random tips as well to kind of help prevent issues in the future, I guess. So let's get into it. Alright, so for a little overview here, if you kind of look at our tank here, you can see there's 3 lids. So basically there's a big huge holding tank here, and it's kind of divided up, so everything kind of comes and dumps into this very first tank, and then all the solids kind of settle to the bottom, and the liquids kind of go up and then go through this baffle, or basically it comes up to a certain point and then rolls into the kind of the second tank, and then it's the same thing again. It if any little solids that kind of got through there, those kind of settle down to the bottom, and then the liquid kind of pours over into kind of the folding kind of lift station tank area, and that's where you actually have a pump. At least in our setup we have a pump. If you have kind of an old drain field, some of those are gravity fed, but I believe most of the mound system nowadays are all done with pumps. So that's one other thing too. You know, if you're preparing, get your well hooked up to a generator or something, you probably also want to work on getting that septic tank into the mix as well, just so that doesn't overflow. So anyways, now that I've got a little off topic here, so there's basically a pump, and what they call them is sewage pumps. They can handle kind of a little bit bigger solids and stuff. It's not like a sump pump, but they're called sewage pumps, and they're sold at most, store, like hardware stores like your Menards, your Home Depot, your Lowe's, and some of that stuff. And then it basically comes up and goes out a pipe and gets pumped out to your mound system. So that's just kind of a little overview. So the issue that we just encountered is our float going out, but we also had one other little thing that went out as well. So that is actually our alarm system. So one little quick tip here is make sure you test your alarm system. There's generally a little test button on those things, but probably the smartest thing, or the most foolproof way to actually test it, is get your lid off, take a little broomstick or something down there and lift that up and have someone listen for that alarm to go off. So first step, I guess, in kind of troubleshooting these systems, there's not a whole lot down there. There's a pump, some pipes, a little electrical that's supplied to the system, and of course your float. So the very first thing I do, especially since it's above ground, you don't have to touch anything in the tank, is testing that outlet. Generally there's a little cover or something that you have to remove, and then you can kind of plug in a multimeter. If you don't have a multimeter laying around, go grab a lamp from inside or something that will light up or indicate that there's actually power to that outlet. Then the next thing is testing your actual float. So a real quick, easy way to test that float, at least for our setup, is it's basically like a piggyback type setup, is just unplug the pump actually directly from the back of the float and plug it right into the outlet. If you know the outlet's working, and then you can see if that pump starts pumping. And then, then it's a little process elimination. Is it the pump, or is it actually the float? Or maybe it's both. So when we had the guy come out and pump our tank, I asked him a couple questions. One thing I asked him was, what is kind of the average life expectancy of most of these pumps? And he said he kind of found that they average around 10 to 15 years. Looking online, I saw some people say that they had them going for 30 years without a single issue, and other people that said they hardly make it 2 years and they're replacing it. So I think it really comes down to your use and obviously the quality of pump that you put in there. The pump, I had asked him what he kind of recommends is those hydromatic pumps. That's just what he has found to work the best. So, Ford, Chevy, hydromatic, some other brand of pump. So kind of in our situation, there was one thing that kind of came pretty apparent. The guy told us the average lifespan of a pump is 10 to 15 years, and we're kind of right there at that point. And also looking at our plumbing for this, it was very inaccessible. So it came very apparent, if our pump actually ever went out, we'd have to spend another, $200-300 to have our tank pumped, just in order to get down and service our system. So these pumps, the replacement pumps, are generally $200 to $300. A float, $30 or something. So let's say our pump went out, that tank filled back up, we'd have to spend $300 to have them pump it down, and then another $200-300 to replace the actual pumps. Now you're talking a $600 investment. So what we did is we took the time, we went and spent $15 on PVC piping and rerouted it. So now it comes up off the pump, goes straight up, and is like just barely inside the manhole cover here, and then goes back down and then connects back up. And then there's kind of a real quick disconnect here. So if our pump goes out somewhere in the future, it's just kind of disconnecting some of these electrical wires, untwisting this part here, and then we can just grab the whole PVC pipe and just pull it up along with the pump, service it, drop it all back down, and connect it up. And it will be a much easier thing to service. Some systems are set up like this, some aren't. There's kind of not really a standard. Talking with the guy that was out pumping our system on how they plumb some of these tanks. But there is one thing you do have to be very careful about when you're doing this, especially living in a cold climate. You want to drill a handful of holes actually in that 90. So ours came up, went across, back down, and then that 90 kind of going across, we drilled a bunch of holes in that. So when the pump runs, it actually sprays out a little bit, but not too bad. And what those holes do, you don't need a ton of them. You just need a way for water to kind of drain back in there, so you don't end up with that water freezing in your pipe and then end up with a broken pipe in the middle of the winter. So that's one thing I didn't know about until probably up till that point, like just searching the web to kind of find this. I was like, oh, just put it together. But I'm kind of glad I had came across that, because it could have spelt a little bit of disaster for this winter. So we'll kind of wrap up this video with just one last little tip here that I'll kind of leave you with, and that is don't flush baby wipes and Clorox wipes, those type of material, down into your septic. We were pretty fortunate to learn that early on, but didn't really think that much of it. We had flushed a handful of them down, and when the guy came out and cleaned out our tank, it became pretty apparent where those were. There wasn't very many of them, but his thing would not suck them out, and you kind of almost have to scoop them out. It's kind of actually, I shouldn't say funny, but when we were kind of doing a little research on some of this stuff, I came across this video on YouTube of this guy that his whole system was all plugged up, and then they opened up his tank and there was just baby wipes everywhere, and they were just having to scoop those things out like crazy. It was clogging up the pipes, getting stuck in between the baffles, underneath the actual pump motor itself. It was just a nightmare. So anyways, I just wanted to share some of this stuff with you guys. I really hope this can help someone else out. And hopefully, do it yourself, or you can save yourself some pretty big dollars handling a lot of this stuff yourself, and it's really not a very, very hard project. Anyways, hope you guys found this video helpful. Let me know by clicking that thumbs up and subscribing. Thanks for watching.